What's up, everyone? You're listening to Delayed Reaction. I'm your host, Lilo, and I was going to try and make this an evergreen episode, but this is the first episode, so welcome to the inaugural, commensurate, I don't think that's the right word, commensurate podcast for Delayed Reaction. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the movie Alien, and that's the first Alien movie that was released back in 1979. Not the sequels yet, but this is Alien singular. So, like I said, this movie was released in 1979. It was directed by a very young Ridley Scott, and it stars Sigourney Weaver as the titular character, Ellen Ripley, who, for all intents and purposes, is just a genuine BA. She is amazing in this movie. So before we dive deeper, spoilers for the movie Alien, which was released 45 years ago at this point. So if you haven't seen it, this is your warning. I suggest maybe watching it on Hulu if you're interested, but this is your countdown. Spoilers ahead. 3, 2, 1. Spoiler territory. Okay, so as a kid, I had heard of the movie Alien. Never got to watch it though. It kind of looked like it was pretty scary. Sci-fi situation, aliens, outer space. But as I got older as an adult, Alien kind of became like this science fiction staple, where, you know, if you were into sci-fi movies, you had to have seen the movie Alien or Aliens or any of the Alien franchise, because there are countless references made to this movie across all movies. So after watching it, these are my initial thoughts. So as a movie, as like a standalone story, the movie Alien is pretty great. It's got a solid beginning, middle, and end. Maybe there's a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end with Sigourney Weaver basically saying that the last line of the movie is, "I will return in 6 weeks." I mean, I would be okay if it just left it at that, because then, as the audience member, I'm like, oh, great. She probably made it back to Earth after 6 weeks of her recording that message. Um, and then the other aspects of this movie were pretty great. I love the retro futurism that's found in this film, like the big chunky keyboards, the super cool green gigantic pixel monitors that they have. There's a scene where the captain of the ship, Dallas, goes into what is essentially the control room for their mining operation. And it's just this massive bubble of a room where there's dials and buttons and switches, and it's just a stimulation overload nightmare of a room. But what's cool though is that he basically does what we do now and inputs a question into the computer and it pukes out a response. The computer in this case is called Mother. Anyway, the mining crew of the vessel Nostromo gets this distress call from a planet, and they go to investigate because as part of their charter, they have to go and investigate distress signals. The crew is made up of a pretty ragtag group of people. But like I said, they were miners, so their original mission was, I'm assuming, to go mine space for materials and stuff for bringing back to Earth. But it strangely includes a science officer and 2 engineers, which appear to be contractors. They're not necessarily like part of the crew itself. They seem to be crew adjacent. We'll put it that way. So, as they fly out into space, As they fly out into space, um, they go and check out this distress signal. Turns out to be an alien spaceship and freaks the crew out. They go and investigate, find the aliens. Shenanigans ensue. Okay. Um, this leads to one of like the classic science fiction tropes of being infected by a parasitic alien where it doesn't just, appear, or it doesn't just, it has to have like the most violent birth I've ever seen in a movie. And it gets referenced countless times where it's essentially, it bursts through the victim's chest, and then the baby alien comes out, and it's, it grows at a very rapid pace. Um, so, uh, a couple things that I also kind of noticed, right? So, um, the aliens themselves are really cool. Like the design of the aliens is really incredible. They're not your typical big-headed, big-eyed. Well, they do have big heads. I'll get into that in a sec. But they have like they're not like the typical gray aliens that people would make you believe are what aliens look like, right? They have massive heads. They're all black. Um, they have two sets of jaws, which was wild, which is another trope that gets kind of put out these days. And on top of that, they're just dripping in alien goo? I don't even know. Like, this is one of the things that I kind of found a little a little odd about the movie, was that you have this crew and these aliens, and for whatever reason everything is wet. Like, the aliens are wet, the crew is sweaty, the ship is dripping water inexplicably, and just like there's just a constant stream of wet going on. Like, I can only imagine what it would be like to be on set for this, right? Just standing there, and everything's well and good. You come out of makeup, and then suddenly you get just blasted with the mister. Like, Ridley Scott's like, "Hey, we need more mist on this person here. Could spray guy, can you spray Mr. Scarrett, please? He's not nearly as moist as we need him to be." Yeah, read into that what you want. Um, the other special effects were wildly incredible because they're all practical effects, because this was made in 1979. So watching how they make the alien come out of places, and the jump scares that come out, and one of the characters is an android, and I believe his name is Ash. Um, Ash, the character, super creepy. He's the science officer, deeply unsettling as a character. Um, but he, as an android, um, there's a scene where he gets destroyed essentially, and it's crazy because it's at this point where I'm like, okay, he's a synthetic human, um, and then in my brain that comes out looking like the Terminator, or other cybernetic organisms that have metallic body parts. Yeah, no. The creature creation in this decided that not only do they need to not be metallic in any way, shape, or form, but they also need to be very gooey, but filled with like milk. And you're like, why? Why is everything covered in milk? Why are you a synthetic organism made of essentially like rubber tubes and milk? I just don't understand. Um, but the effects of Ash still being alive after being exploded are super, super convincing from a practical effects standpoint. Um, and then, as I mentioned at the top, Sigourney Weaver, absolutely incredible. Just a total take charge, um, secondary captain because the original Captain Dallas, of course, gets killed, as do everyone else in this movie except Ellen Ripley. Um, but she is awesome. Like, she doesn't take crap from anyone. She absolutely understands the story. She knows the consequences and is absolutely willing to do whatever it takes to get away from the aliens, which is more than I can say than most of that crew. Um, but I think those were kind of my high level thoughts. Actually, not so high level. These were just kind of my thoughts of the movie. I loved it. Um, Overall rating on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm gonna give this one a 4. I think it's not quite a masterpiece, but you can absolutely see where it has set the standard for a lot of sci-fi horror movies. And I know in my trailer I said that I wouldn't watch a horror movie, but for some reason this one didn't really stand out as a horror movie to me. It stood out as a science fiction movie that's just scary as hell. So, um, yeah, I would give it a 4 out of 5, which is a pretty good rating, and I think, that's pretty good, a pretty good start for this show. But anyway, l tell me what you think. Did you watch Alien? Did you think, "Why is everything wet?" Let me know your thoughts. Put them in the comments below. And, if you are so inclined, go ahead and subscribe to this channel. And, yeah, we'll see you next week. Until then.